Like we had to know is we're spending money and making money from it.
And it's amazing, like the tiniest little things that can have the biggest impact.
What just happened? Because I'm so more passionate and committed to this, but it's not working.
Friends, today I have Yanik Silver on the podcast. He is one of those guys that gets people to the next level, has an amazing community, and has done fantastic things with his lives, empowering others. Yanik, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, excited.
Yes, your story is fantastic. So talk to me about like how you got on this path.
Well, I feel like it has to start back. So my family immigrated from Russia and it came over when I was 3 years old. And so my dad ended up starting a medical equipment sales and service company and pretty early on. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family and I did everything, working in a family business, you do everything. And so at 14, I was telemarketing. At 16, the only way I got a car was if I went out and cold called doctors. And so I got a very early education in sales and then marketing and business, even though all my friends are like living at the beach. And I'm like, why? And my dad's like, no, you're gonna stay and work. It'll be fine.
Oh my gosh, I could not believe you're cold calling at 14.
Yeah,
I had a cold call when I got out of college and I wanted to cry every day.
Yeah, it was tough. And then 16, imagine being a 16, 17-year-old kid trying to cold call 50-year-old doctors or whatever. And it's like, but I did end up making some sales. And one of my doctor clients actually gave me a tape, this guy named Jay Abraham and Tony Robbins together, their interview about optimizing and leveraging marketing. And I was like, just fascinated by this. And I was just listening to this thing over and over again. And then I got into other personal transformation type stuff. I don't know, from it or somewhere else where it's like Earl Nightingale and it was like Jim Rohn and just all these different people. And then also marketing type people as well. And I just loved listening. I'd be driving around in my car and I took I think it was Jim Rohn's advice or who? No, it was Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy said, "Make your car a university on wheels." I'm like, oh, that sounds good. And so I played pretty competitive travel hockey at the time, and my hockey buddies are like, "What the hell are these tapes in your car?" I'm like, "Don't worry, you're not going to like any of these." But it's just like doing, like Earl Nightingale also gave me words to the things that I was already thinking and feeling, but I didn't have the words for it. It's just like, if you watch what other people are doing and you don't know exactly what to do the opposite. Or, and it's like, also you could become an expert by studying anything for 1 hour a day for 3 years, or for an hour a day for 5 years to become a world-class expert. And I was just fascinated by this idea of, could I get people to respond and even buy something without me ever talking to them, right? Because it was the pain of cold calling. And then I was learning marketing, learning how to write ads and copy and so forth. And it was like starting to work and it took my dad's business from a little regional player to a national player. And my dad the whole time was like, nobody's going to read all this. No, why are we doing this? And I'm like, let's just try it. Let's just see. And it worked.
Wow. Okay. So did you go to college or did you self-study your way through?
Well, so my kids are about to go to college right now. And I tell them that, college is one of those things where it seems like everyone wants to go and is going. And I did go to college. I went to a top 25 business school, but I really don't feel like I learned that much there. And it was from beforehand and still during it. And then after, like, I just continue. I think you can learn so much yourself. And you just, it's like, so many people are like, oh, I'm done with school. I'm never going to have to, whatever, learn something again. And I think there's just this, terrible attitude because it's like this constant opportunity to improve ourselves. And that, like, to me, like, I think our lives change through the books we read or materials we study, the people we meet and the experiences we have. And so like books are like my best friends and somebody poured 20, 30 years of their life, their career into a book and condense it down into something that, like, you use that. And now we have so many amazing podcasts like this, and we have, YouTube, it's just so many things. It's like, if you want to know anything, you can go out and go do it, but you need self-responsibility to go decide, yeah, I'm going to go do this and not wait or be a victim of whatever circumstances.
Right. So when you were in college, you were studying and learning ways to help expand your dad's business.
Yeah, I have a BS in marketing, and so I'd be asking my professors about like, hey, have you seen this person, or have you thought about like why do we not, I don't know, like track how much we're paying in this so that we know is it working or not. And it was it might be different now. I mean, I attended college 30 years ago, but it was really about big brand building. It was not about that what do you need as a smaller entrepreneur to know is this working, because we gotta as a entrepreneur, like for my dad's business, like we had to know is if we're spending money and making money from it, or else we're going to be out of business.
Right, right, right. You need that ROI calculated. Is this working?
Right.
Do we need to shift? Do we need to? And it's amazing, like the tiniest little things that can have the biggest impact, right? Like we'll do A/B testing on some videos on Instagram or TikTok, and it's the smallest thing will be different, and it'll go two different levels.
Really? Yeah. What's one that's been really surprising to you recently?
Okay, so one, and it's always surprising what goes, right? So one of them went where I brought a hair dryer to Everest Base Camp. Okay.
Okay.
I brought a hair dryer because I hadn't climbed it before and I thought I was going to get sick and die because couldn't dry my hair because I have so much hair and it wouldn't dry in 24 hours. And so it was this big deal and whatever else like that. And I was embarrassed. I didn't want to dry my hair at base camp. I wanted to be in my tent and have nobody know and me just take care of my need. And I couldn't because they gave me a solar powered battery to be able to dry the hair, to use the hair dryer. So I had to be
Right.
out in the sun. So then everybody knew. And at first it was really embarrassing. But then when I got back to like town, people are like, oh, you're the girl that blew dry her hair. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, thank you for doing that. Thank you for being a female and not apologizing for your needs. And like that gave me courage to ask for something that I needed. And so like I had this huge shame story going and it actually like allowed me to look at it from a different perspective. And I'm glad I did it. Of course, can you imagine what TikTok did with this thing? Oh my gosh, you made the Sherpas carrying this hair dryer and people are dying and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, well, first, obviously you don't get into any of these battles. You just let people have a platform to say. You're like, no one carries anything into base camp, just to let you know. It is now all done by helicopter, maybe a few animals for like pictures. Otherwise, nothing is carried, right? It's like on the mountain, maybe. But I didn't carry my hairdryer up the mountain. I carried it to base camp. Anyways, it was funny.
Yeah, that's
So,
hilarious. And how many pounds is the hair dryer? 3 pounds?
I
Four
mean,
pounds?
one, because it's like a little teeny 1000 watt, like thing.
But
And I mean, it's fat. And then, like, the battery that came with it got left behind. So now these people have a solar battery to be able to utilize. I mean, like, the whole thing was there's so much good, but
right.
we need the haters to have the good go
But I
sometimes.
love also the way that you're like, I'm going to let them, figure it out and let them play it out, because, getting involved in all of that is usually a lose lose.
Yeah, no.
And but yeah, you're like, yeah, this is what I need, and you stepped up to what you needed, which I love.
Yeah,
And
like 1,000,003 viewers had a lot of opinions. So there you go.
of course, of course they did.
Like, oh, you poor things have nothing to worry about but my hair dryer and Everest. That's awesome. So, anyways, okay. So then, when did you go out on your own, and when did you start your own thing? Did you ever work for another company besides your dad, or how?
Uh, well, at one point I was kind of pissed off at my dad, and so at 16 or 17, I decided to work at a yogurt company, and that was terrible. Like I was breaking down all the yogurt equipment at night, and I basically came crawling back. I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to keep working with you. So I, I learned all about the marketing stuff and did really well there. And my doctor clients were like, "Oh, how'd you do that? Could you teach me?" So I started consulting for other doctors, which
Mhm.
then I realized that the leverage there wasn't going to be that big, because I'd just be trading time for money. And at that point, I had seen something about how do you basically sell your own information. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. So I created a kit for doctors, how to get more patients. And then what I did was I actually put out an ad, and I had 10 doctors respond, and I had the sales letter of like selling the thing, of a $900 package, and nobody bought it. And then on the second notice, nobody bought it. And then finally, the third notice, where it's like coming up to the deadline, I had through the fax machine that don't really exist anymore. It's like, I had finally one order. And it's like the energy of that was just so incredible. It got, when you put out something that, that is yours, and somebody pays you money for it. And so that idea of like, so this is, what I guess now would be called a side hustle, right? So it was during working with my dad, and then like, so I put this thing out, and then like I would clock out at 5 o'clock every single night. I told that doctor, I'm like, hey, this is being republished. We're going to put it out in 30 days. We're not going to charge your credit card until then. And so it gave me the impetus to go and get this thing done. And then that turned into this new revenue stream of helping doctors. So that was sort of my one sort of nudge over, because I was already working with doctors, selling them stuff, but then I could help them with their marketing. And so that was kind of an easy transition. And then around that same time, I saw the internet really taking off, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And so I'm like, I think I'm going to go do this. And I left my dad's business because the other publishing company was, paying enough that I could go and leave. And at literally 3 o'clock in the morning, I had this idea for a website called Instant Sales Letters, which became my first $1 million product, which just like little fill in the blank sales letter templates. But they came from like stuff I created for my dad's business, like these sales letters, and then also other clients, the doctors, and then other clients. I was helping out other sort of family members and friends. One had a deli, and one had I'm going to say mechanic shop, auto repair shop. And so all these other ones. And then so I created all the marketing for it. I'm like, oh, the other business owners could probably use this. And so that was what became the first sort of $1 million product. And then other people like, oh, could you, wow, this is really interesting. Can you show me what you did? And then that led to this whole other career of helping people take their knowledge and information and sell it online. And that became something I did for quite a while. And then about 15 years ago, I asked a really simple question. This is the whole success to significance, which was, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now? And outside looking in, I was making a lot of money, helping a lot of people, driving a hot sports car, great reputation in the space, and everything seemed great. But in my journal, like if I was really honest, the answer was no. And it led me to this whole other path.
Wow. How did you have the courage to step into the other path?
That's a great question. So I had been really, I had 7 or 8 different like projects, everything that hit the 7-figure mark, just from like an idea or intuition or just following, I'm like, oh, this feels like something interesting. Let's put on this seminar. Let's do this thing. And so this felt like just another version of that,
Okay.
where it's like, okay, I'm going to, combine together everything that I love. I'm like, all right, what would make me happy? And I'd be like hanging out with other top entrepreneurs, some of my friends and colleagues, and then combining it with business, combining it with adventures, combining it with charity. And I called it Maverick Business Adventures, and it was kind of like short for MBA. And I'm like, oh, this is gonna be really fun. And then I did the exact same thing that I did with that very, very first business, which is I put the stake in the ground, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna put on, this was a whole different thing because it involved adventure trips and travel and experiences. I was like, all right, we're going to do a Baja dune buggy racing trip in this state. I have no idea how we're going to fill it, how we're going to get, a celebrity guest or whatever it is. But I trust that when you make those commitments, things work out. And so I did that, and then we filled it, and it was great. But except we lost $40,000 on that trip. I'm like, it's fine. It's whatever. It's an investment. It's a whole new thing. And then after $400,000, my wife's like, what the hell are you doing? And so when you say you got the courage to it, like it was easy at that point because it was just like, oh, I'm just gonna go do this thing. The courage, I think, really came at that moment, whereas like you could easily go back to sort of the golden handcuffs, which I could have easily gone back to sort of the digital marketing world and been like, all right, well, I guess it didn't work. I'm gonna go back to what I think I know, what people want me to keep teaching them or whatever it is. But it felt like I had to really dig into my why. And the why wasn't to build an adventure travel company. It was to change the way business is played. And so I had to make this leap. And I call this the stage 3 entrepreneur. So it's like stage 1 is we jump out of the airplane, we have an idea, we're building the parachute on the way down. We're like, okay, I think this will work. And then stage 2 is like, oh, it's working. We're making some money, we're getting some accolades, we're, whatever it is, and or it's kind of going up. And then in stage 3 is like it levels off, and that's that spot where it's like, all right, is this really what I'm meant to be doing? And that's where you can get stuck going back to these golden handcuffs, or you can make this leap, which is really this leap of faith into this, let's call it a second mountain or summit or whatever it is. But it really is connecting your head, your heart, your higher purpose, right? Your head is your business side, your heart is the impact you want to make in the world, and then their higher purpose is like, all right, why am I here? and that requires, like, the old way doesn't work. Like the same thing that got you to where you are is not going to get you to that next mountain, or and it's really hard because a lot of it is identity based. It's like, who do we think we are? And so during this time was a pretty dark period because things were going really sideways. Things were like, I had cut out a lot of the other stuff because it didn't feel like it was in full alignment. I didn't want to do it. I also wanted to almost like kind of like burn the ships and be like, all right, this is the only thing that I'm going to be working on. And it was, it was definitely a difficult period because your self worth is so connected as an entrepreneur to your net worth, and I'm like, all right, well, things are just going sideways. Like, well, nothing like this has ever happened before. I'm like, what just happened? Because I'm so more passionate and committed to this, but it's not working. And it was actually a gift because it forced you to like go back. So all the things I had been studying since I was 17, all the personal transformation stuff, I like went back to bedrock of like, all right, what makes a good day? What makes a good week? What makes, and all of it. And then I also ended up selling my Aston Martin to pay for some bills. And it was like, okay, I mean, I easily could have like leased another hot car or whatever, but I'm like, no, I'm gonna kind of like sit with this, like, and be like, all right, well, what is, and I have my little beat up MDX. And I'm like, all right, this is even better. Like, I can put my paddle boards in there. I don't have to get it detailed all the time. I don't have to care about, who's valet parking it, or whatever. And it's just like, you just get back into like identity. Like, who are you really without any of the trappings of quote
Yeah.
unquote success?
What all the fluff?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it that you had the courage to do that. And with a family, right? So it's not only you, it's maintaining a family through all this.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I have two kids, and so it's, it's not like we were, on the verge of going homeless or anything like that. So we still had a decent amount of money in the bank, but it was also not, it was definitely a time where I've always been like, all right, I'll figure it out. I'm always like, we'll figure out something, some creative idea, whatever it is. And so for this one, it was just like, all right, well, this really is what I think I'm meant to be doing. Like, and why is it not working? And so when we got to the real why, which is how do we change the way business is played, I realized that I had all these different pieces of the puzzle, which then became this framework for what's called now evolved enterprise. So it'd be like from very well-known business celebrities that had bits of the puzzle, and then unknown people who had all these other pieces, which then we really leaned into our mission, things started turning around, and went from like losing money to actually making money on what this network was, and what we were doing, because it had much deeper meaning. It wasn't just about, I don't know, adventure travel, which is great, but it was a much deeper thing. And then even so, it forced me to like do things like almost also connecting back to like spiritual practices and deeper work. Um, and so I remember one point where things were sideways, and I asked my 111-year-old self, "What do I need to know?" I love questions, right? Like, your questions really create your answers. And so not only that, but then I use my non-dominant hand. I use my left hand, and so the answer that I got was, light 1,000 suns who each have the potential to light another 1,000 suns. And it really just changed everything. Like, it just, I was like, oh wow, that's really really interesting. And then so during that time, we'd always been about these three circles of like a dollar sign, a happy face, and a heart. I'm like, all right, that's where, I wanted to play. And that's where I thought, we could really do something. And then it changed into a tree instead of a dollar sign. So it used to be make more, give more, have more fun. And then the tree really represented growth. Like how do you grow not only yourself, but your business? And then how do you make a difference in the world and have some fun in the process? So it was a little change, but it was I think, it became a big change. And then also changed the name of the group to Maverick 1000 to represent that idea of one entrepreneur could change an industry, but 1,000 together could help change the world. And then really leaning deeper into that evolutionary transformation and growth. And so like 2012, we would do a summit like somewhere, I don't know, the beginning of December. And I was like, all right, well, we need to go down to the Mayan Riviera because of this whole, or Riviera Maya, like this whole Mayan calendar change, because I've gotten really deep into that, and what that meant and where we're going. And my team's like, you're crazy. That's 4 days before Christmas. And we ended up making it happen. And there's so much magic to it. It's a longer story, but we did these different ceremonies and things like that in there. And we're the first group to ever spend the night in this Mayan village. And then it was just like, all right, this is definitely our path forward. And there was like no accidents. Like, we literally came out of this Temescal, which is like a Mayan sweat lodge, and the symbolism is that you're being reborn, you're coming out of the womb of the earth. And we came out at midnight on the solstice. Like you couldn't have planned it any better to be
Wow.
like, all right, yeah, you're in the right spot. This is the right, thing that you should be working on.
Wow. Okay, so now you call it the 1000 Mavericks.
Yeah, Maverick 1000, right?
Maverick 1000. And how does one become a Maverick?
I think you're already a maverick. You probably know it if you're a maverick. You're someone that has a big vision and you want to help change the world through your business. And you could go it alone, or you could do it together with these other weirdos and misfits and people that are like, oh yeah, you have a big vision and we want to support you and we understand the same way. It's like the I don't know. It's like embedded in you. And to me, a maverick is like a trailblazer and someone that follows their own path. But it's kind of funny because it's a solo thing being a maverick, but it's a group. It's like you can, to me, this new age is really about collectives. It's about cooperation. And so yeah, we can get a certain amount solo, but I imagine on the mountain you can't get to the top only solo. I mean, some people might, but
Yeah, well, I talk about it in my book. Big mountains take big teams. So the bigger the mountain you want to climb, or the bigger the thing you want to build, the bigger the team you need to have to make it happen. Because otherwise, you're doing it all alone. When you get to the top, what are you going to high five yourself? I mean, come on, right? Like you
right.
want to. It just makes it go wider and farther than what you would do than what one person can do by themselves. I mean, you put
Yeah.
five people together, that synergy just makes it magnify that much more. And people love to be a part of pursuits that are inspiring and big and large. And it's important to bring people along that journey because it helps them ignite what's inside of them.
Right, exactly. And then so that's, one of the key parts of evolved enterprise is you actually start with yourself first. Like how do you get to know yourself and what, that kind of work we were talking about, like that self, I don't know, the identity, like your true essence of who you are. So it's a lot of work on getting to who you are. Also looking at maybe the parts that you might not want to look at, like your shadow parts and like these aspects. And then as you know yourself, then the next ring out is the cause, which is the why, which is the, like that's the real mission. And that's either going to be foundational for your business. So you started your business for, for probably some bigger why, and it might have got lost in the process of your business, or it's like, all right, well, I want to do something right now. It's a really interesting moment because it used to be part one of your life was go make a lot of money, and then part two of your life is go give it away. And now there's an opportunity to really integrate everything together, and so that's where you can when you've realized what is your mission and your why, then you can integrate it into what you're doing in business or in the world or whatever it is. And so I find that the people I work with, either they already have it and they know what it is, or they go back and rediscover it, or they're like, all right, well, we started this business for X reason, and the marketplace who we want to serve, like here's the thing that they care about the most, and then they get wrapped up into what is that mission and purpose. And like you said, Jen, it's like we get further by having that bigger mission and purpose. So if I told you, oh, we're gonna, I don't know, like do this little small thing, it's like not exciting. But if we're like, hey, we want to, I don't know, give a billion people clean drinking water, like that's exciting. And if you can wrap that up into an economic model and a business, then that's even more exciting, right? So that gets more people involved, and then you start getting unique celebrities or unique partners involved. You get new distribution partners, and your team is aligned on it. So Evolved Enterprise really sets up everything because it's like the stats, it's a seismic shift that's going on. So customers want to buy from companies that have a greater purpose and mission, and so they're choosing where they spend, where their wallet goes, and then also from the inside out, which is team members want to work for companies that have a greater purpose and mission. And so the more you can really align with that, then it works out for everything to really just turbocharge what you're doing.
Yeah, I feel like the why drives so much more than it ever has. And finding those people that vibe the same thing you vibe and then carrying those causes and pursuits forward is definitely
Yeah.
the way things are moving.
And it doesn't have to be like, so a lot of times you'll see models. So I'm friends with like Blake from Tom Shoes, right? Like, so a lot of times that model was buy one, give one. And that worked really well for Tom Shoes. And there's a couple others that worked really well. And then a lot of people try and force that whatever that round hole into a square peg, or whatever the saying is, it's square peg into a round hole. And it's like, oh, well, everything should be like that, but there's not that. So in Evolved Enterprise, we talk about 11 different impact models, and there's lots of ways of figuring out what is your impact layer. And as a business, you have such leverage. Like, I really think that we can nudge consciousness using the leverage of business, because of all the different ways that businesses impact the world. So you think about like your distribution, like that is a voice or an opportunity of sharing something. And Patagonia has done that incredibly well, where like on Black Friday, they changed their homepage to be like, all right, well, this is what we stand for. And from a very practical, tactical, let's make more money aspect, that doesn't make sense. But if they're looking at the bigger picture of what they actually changed I think they changed their ultimate mission statement to be like, we're all about the earth or something like that. I forgot what it is, but it's like really fascinating to see what they've done. And they're definitely one of these touchstone sort of just iconic brands that really has done so much. And so you got your distribution, you got your supply chain, like who are you buying from? You got your team. So I call it empowered employment. Like, could you actually hire people that might be seen as a disadvantage to turn it into an advantage? There's a company called Ultra Testing, and they do quality control testing on different like browser platforms and different things like that. And they hire people on the neurodiversity scale, so that, because typically they pay more attention to certain details and they're good with
Yeah.
repetitive tasks. And so it's like, oh, that's perfect for that kind of work. And so it's amazing in that way. There's also your actual product or service, obviously, like how do you bake in the impact into your product or service? And then there's like the talent or the unique sort of genius within your teams. There's a company called Pacific, where they make non-perishable goods and soups and different things. And they shut down their production line once a month, and they work with a local food bank. And they're like, all right, just give me whatever you have. And so instead of, again, shutting down your production line is not good for typically business, but creativity and using their team's sort of natural gifts, it's great, because now the team's like, oh, well, what can we make out of this? And they make non-perishable goods out of whatever's available. And then they save like hundreds of thousands of pounds of food from going to waste. So it's like this perfect way of thinking. And by the way, notice I didn't even mention money as one of those. And that's another one. So there's lots of ways of figuring out how do we create an impact with our business that's just good for the world and gets everyone excited by it.
No, it's so exciting just to hear you talk about it. I love it. So, are you still hosting events for people to attend and just network and share ideas with?
I think I lost you for a second. Am I still hosting one?
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Do you still host events where people get to network and share ideas and connect with?
Yes. Yeah, we still do that with the Maverick group. So everything from like we do a week on Richard Branson's island, Necker Island, which is, one of our favorite marquee events we do, to we used to do an event in Haiti before the political climate really changed, where people would pay for building self-sustaining villages there. And then we'll do different events throughout the year. We did Antarctica 2 years ago, which was really amazing. So there's always like different things that we're doing, but they're all around that growth, impact, and fun. And so Antarctica was also, we brought Jacques Cousteau's grandson, Philippe Cousteau, and his wife, Ashlyn. And so they shared about what's going on in the food web down there and in the Arctic. And we love bringing people together that have unique leverage. And so we have people that have tremendous leverage in the supplement business. And he was talking about how krill are overfished, and they're actually used for like fish oil supplements. And this one guy who had big fish oil or big supplement business, he's like, well, even 20% are rancid. And so we're talking about how do we bring algae based fish oil and then utilizing it with his leverage points. So it's like, we love bringing these sandboxes together and then seeing how do we have these conversations, and how do we sort of catalyze some input or impact that could be really interesting. And we do that at all our events. It's just figuring out what, it's like we can bring our different resources, our brain power and talents, and see what are those puzzle pieces that we can pull together.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so on the form that you filled out, you talk about the cosmic alarm clock. So we need to talk about that for the audience here today.
Yeah, the cosmic alarm clock is, I think of it as this little voice that gets, it's always going to be like a very quiet voice that's going to be telling you something, and you can either hit snooze and not listen to it or answer it. And so I've seen it multiple times in my life, in my career. So that one was that question of like, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now? And so this cosmic alarm clock, I think it's also driven by like synchronicities and these signs and symbols that show up there. Like, all right, that's almost like too hard not to pay attention to. You can if you're like ultra pragmatic and you're like can explain off whatever, but like so coming out of that Temescal at midnight on the solstice, I'm like, okay, that's that means that there's something here, and I really think the universe talks to us through these synchronicities and through these symbols, and so the more we're paying attention to it, and so the cosmic alarm clock, um, I love also like following, which and it might not even be again pragmatically, who knows what it's going to happen, but you just follow your curiosity and follow whatever you're interested in, and so like for me, most recently I saw this art challenge. It was like 100-day art challenge to make a piece of art every single day. So as
Oh
a
wow.
kid, I wanted to be a professional hockey player and a cartoonist in the off season was my original sort of plan. I did not make it to the NHL. I still play men's league hockey. Played last night, but as a cartoonist, like I put all of that away, and then in my journal, I started coming back to like doodling and drawing, and then so I saw this art challenge, and I'm like, oh, it'd be kind of interesting. But wow, I travel around a lot. 100 days is a long time, but I'm like, oh, all right, I'm gonna do it. And I love experiments too because you just it's like, let's say you want to add something or take away something and be like, all right, I'm going to do no sugar for X amount of time, or I'm going to meditate, or I'm going to journal, like whatever it is. But an experiment gives you like a beginning and an end, and then you're like, okay, did it help, did it not help, and then you can evaluate. So for this one, it was 100 days, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to make it 108 days. And I took a moleskin journal and I did 108 check boxes. And so every single night, no matter where I was, what I was doing, it could be 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, I would draw something. I decided to draw a page, like a journal page, and I'd meditate and see what came through me, or I'd use old journals. And so it ended up like this, like these just little hand drawn, whatever,
Oh my
whatever
god.
would sort of come through me. And, and then after about day 50 or 60, it turned into like an oracle. And that's, it became this cosmic alarm clock. I'd be like, all right, well, what message do I need to know? If I was writing it for myself, I was doing it
Right.
for myself. And then I was like, all right, well, let's see what it is. And then when I finished all of it, I showed it to my friends, and they're like, oh, this is amazing. And one of them was like, oh, I'm gonna pay to publish this. And so he published 888 of these, like these little vegan leather versions. And then I got a breakfast meeting with a pretty big book publisher, and they're like, wow, this is amazing. And then they fast forwarded a contract, and then there's a set of oracle cards that came with it. So it's like just continuing to follow like whatever your interest is. And I feel like it's just the beginning of what this is. And so we have ideas of like creating a cosmic alarm clock, like an actual alarm clock, but it does certain things to tell you what give you messages or whatever, and just have some fun with it. And so every time that you follow your interest, passion, fun, and without even having a plan for it, something shows up.
Yeah, I can relate 100%. So
Yeah.
when I got into that horrific car crash, right? And then I made a bucket list because now I was not afraid of what other people thought of me. I was afraid of dying. Like if I
Mm,
die, I want to know what pasta tastes like in Italy. Like I want to do
mm.
these things and experience this world that we have. And so I started leaning into things that got me excited. And then I was turning 40 in 2020. I looked at my list. I'm like, I want to climb a mountain for my 40th birthday to launch that decade, which then that got up to Everest and that got up to setting a world record. I hadn't slept in a tent before. I climbed one mountain before. But like you just lean into these things that why not? Like my thing was like, why not? What's the worst thing that could happen? And it's just so fun when we allow play and curiosity back into our lives.
Oh, 100%. And sometimes you have to schedule it because we get
Yes.
too overloaded as adults. And play is like I have this little doodle that I made where it has a picture of the world, and it says rules. Rule number one, play fully. And then rule number two, see rule number one. And play fully to me is like really playing, and not just like playing just to play, which is great too, but like how do you fully express yourself? How are you really getting everything that you are, and then play fully equals purposefully and profitfully. Like they're all interconnected. And that's the thing that I've always recognized is play is that it's definitely a magic part. and like we don't give ourselves enough permission to play. And I love, the bucket list. I had something I called it my ultimate life list, and around that same time of like, I'm just going to put things down, and I gave myself. So like sometimes the first version I edited myself a little bit, where I wrote I'm going to be a semi professional beach volleyball player because I'm 5'8", and I'm like, I'm not gonna, that's pretty hard, and then B, I'm not gonna train for it, and etc. But one of my buddies at the time was on the pro tour, and we're instant messaging, and AOL instant messenger days, and he's like, oh dude, my partner just bailed on me. I'm like, you need a 5'8" partner. He's like, yeah, I'll get back to you. And so it was an hour before the deadline, and I'm like, all right, I'll sponsor our team, Albie. And he's like, all right, fine. And so I got to play in a professional beach volleyball tournament. So technically, I was a professional beach volleyball player. So then it gave me like more permission to like do wilder things on that ultimate life list, and be like, who cares? It's just a list. But more often than not, there's magic that happens when you write down something that you really do want, like there's a deep desire to it. And then I have this plaque of what I created actually in my journal, and it says, trust that the universe has even more in store for you than you can imagine, and a few other things on here. But that notion of like there's even more for you, like I assume you didn't imagine that it was going to be Everest was going to be your first mountain when you wrote that down.
No, not. I mean, it wasn't even it, right? It was a mountain named Ama de Blanc that my son heard as "I'm a dumb blonde." He's like, Mom, you can't climb an I'm a dumb blonde mountain. You need to climb a real mountain like Everest. I'm like, it's not I'm a dumb blonde. It's Ama de Blanc, jerk. And so then that upped it to Everest, right? And then my coach was like, gave me this book about becoming an uphill athlete. In the front, someone got a Guinness World Record. And I said, I could have done that. I was homeschooling because school got out because of COVID. So all of a sudden I had all these kids at home. We didn't like each other. It wasn't going well. I'm like, if I got to Guinness World Record, I'd be a cool mom. I'm not a cool mom right now. He's like, I'll think of something. So he came up with that 7-second summits, which to me sounded like a tongue twister at first. I didn't even know what he was talking about. And then when he got into it more, he's like, hey, it's only been done by one male. It's harder than the other. You'd be the first woman. I'm like, yes, I'm going to be the female that reminds you that as a mom, we're allowed to have fun and we're allowed to do crazy things. And in fact, when we do, we actually give our kids permission to do the same thing and break out of this like drone life.
Totally. So are you a cool mom now? Did you get
No, I'm not. Dude, I'm not. I don't think I am. Like, here's the crazy thing. So I climbed my last mountain. One of them I failed, so I had to do one of them, like a couple of them twice. I climbed my last mountain. I'm on an airplane forever. I get home. My kids meet me at the airport. My son's like, yay, Mom, you got the world record. I'm like, thanks, honey. And he goes, Mom, you have bad breath. I'm like, yeah, but I'm on a plane for 20 hours, like jerk. Okay, fine. And like, that's life, right? Like you're cool for 2 seconds and then you're back to normal mom and do your thing.
Yeah. I remember this was like maybe 10 years ago or something. I was doing a halo skydive, which is high altitude, low opening, 30,000 feet. And my kids were a lot younger. And one of my buddies like called me up. He's like, dude, how are you doing this? Like, how are you doing this with little kids? Like you need to really, not do this. And I'm like, no, I'm doing it because of them as well. Like, I want them to know that, you can still follow your adventures and unique experiences or whatever it is. And that you want them to be encouraged in some way, because they're going to learn more by seeing whatever you do than by whatever you tell them to do.
I lost you a sec. Sorry. I think I caught it. What is on your list right now? Like, what's one of your 50 things right now on your list?
It's a good question. It's so interesting. So I just turned 50, and so
Happy birthday.
you went and climbed the mountain for your 40th. What I did was I spent 4 days and 4 nights in complete darkness for my 50th.
You did a darkness retreat?
Did a darkness retreat, yeah.
Oh, I want to do one of those so bad.
Yeah.
Was it amazing?
It was definitely amazing. Yeah, it was like, and it's like one of those things where like my kids are like, "Oh yeah, Dad's a total weirdo," and
I know,
me
too.
But yeah. It's just like following and pursuing whatever is sort of coming up. And when I first heard about it, I'm like, huh, it seems super alluring and it seemed scary. And I'm like, all right, well, that means that there's something there. And so I like stuff like that where it feels like it's, there's a big lesson somewhere in it. And then like I feel like my years of meditation and other kind of work has all prepped me for it. So
Yeah.
it was actually really powerful, but it wasn't scary. Like it just felt like this. My wife had this intention for me that it could be cozy, so it became this cozy cosmic cocoon, and it was definitely like an initiation. And I felt like, went through all the stages of my life and then integrated all the different parts of who I was, and coming out now as this next phase. And so it was incredible. It was definitely super powerful. And but I don't really have that many things right now on that list. It's kind of interesting. It's more like, I have this big cosmic vision, which I think is my lifetime of sort of my sandbox, which are these seeds and the suns and the blooms, which are like just, putting out seeds of higher consciousness, and then also working with amazing like wisdom keepers and elders, and helping them put out what are their seeds of wisdom, and then lighting more suns, which are, not just the Mavericks, but really everyone who's doing this kind of work of helping other leaders, other entrepreneurs, others, like how do we nudge them? So how do we help them light suns? And then out come blooms, and blooms are just unique opportunities and ways to play together. And it's this sort of interconnected, organic way of I don't know, I call it this cosmic vision, but it's really like an ecosystem or ecoverse.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so what would make you feel that this next decade has been successful?
Good question. I think that I love I love just playing. So playing more, but
Yep.
it's I have a couple projects that are super playful. Like one is called Evil Schemes for Global Good. It's going to be a game show, and evil is an acronym. And so coming up with business ideas to help people around the world, to start for under $1,000 can make them more than $1,000, and it's all baked into a particular kind of cause and impact. So working on a bunch of different impact issues, but turning them into little micro businesses, and then also something I call the Cosmic Bakery and Joke Shop, which are these fun little projects that are almost like Trojan horses for higher consciousness. So I want to do more with my art, where it's like using fun things like, so this is one of my drawings. Oops. It's the
Okay.
cosmic sloth of 1,000 suns, and like, but how do we make a sticker not a sticker, like beyond the sticker? Like, so could it be like you scan it and it has an impact thing that you do each day, or has a, unique sort of synchronicity that might get spurred on by it, or it has like an EMF blocking thing, or like something that is way beyond just a sticker. So we have all these ideas for art and artifacts, and especially for your desk, and so it's not just like maybe a little plaque, but the plaque does something, or a, like this is what Jim Henson had on his desk, obviously without the cosmic little lightning bolt, but where anytime you need a creativity nudge, it's you scan it and it has like a little nudge for it. So creating more utility into really fun things. So that would make me feel great. And just doing more, like I always think more about intention than even like, what is the, I don't know, the dollar amount or the
Hmm.
specific things. Like how do I do more, how do I play more with all the people that I love, and just work on projects that make me feel really great, and knowing that these ripples of impact that are happening, and that's all I kind of care about, is so planting more seeds, lighting suns, and seeing these infinite blooms baking into cosmic pies.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so how do people that are listening today get more of you? Where do we find you? What do we do? All that.
Yeah. So if you're a 7, 8, or 9 figure entrepreneur, check out maverick1000.com. And otherwise, I have a blog, yaniksilver.com, YANIK silver.com, which I kind of post that every once in a while. And then, I don't know, check out the Cosmic Journal or Evolved Enterprise